Freud and Jung disagreed on almost everything, but on one truth they stood together. Women with high spiritual intelligence live by laws most of the world cannot see. To the ordinary eye, such a woman looks no different. She works, she laughs, she walks the same streets. But underneath, her life moves according to deeper rhythms. Jung saw her as the rare fruit of individuation, a psyche that had resolved its contradictions and now radiates coherence. Freud observed the same phenomenon from another angle, a woman whose unconscious no longer sabotages her, but serves her, redirecting inner conflict into quiet power. What makes her existence so unsettling is not that she does more, but that she moves differently. Rooms shift when she enters. Strangers speak truths they never meant to share. Old friends sometimes fall away, whispering that she has changed, without realizing it is not she who changed, but they who stayed behind. Consider her presence at a family gathering. The conversations circle the same complaints, the same small dramas. Everyone laughs at the same tired jokes, but she sits there with a kind of luminous distance. She still loves them, but she no longer belongs to that orbit. Freud described this as liberation from repetition compulsion, the breaking of patterns that once kept her bound, or watch what happens in her workplace. A meeting spirals into tension, voices raised, unspoken resentments thick in the air. Then she speaks, not louder than others, not longer, but the room steadies. Jung would call it unconscious communication, the invisible order of a psyche at peace with itself, reordering the field around it. And then there is the stranger on the train who suddenly tells her about a divorce, a secret shame, a dream they've never shared. They do not know why they spoke. She doesn't ask for confession, but it arrives anyway. Freud saw this as sublimation, inner turmoil transformed into safety that others can feel, an energy field where their defenses collapse. These are not accidents. They are signs, phenomena so rare that Jung estimated less than 1 in 100 ever embody them. They are the quiet markers of high spiritual intelligence, invisible to most, unmistakable to those who carry them. In this journey, we will uncover 6 such things, 6 experiences that only women with high spiritual intelligence live through, 6 patterns that look like strangeness from the outside, but in truth are the proof of a deeper evolution. Stay with me, because once these 6 signs are seen clearly, what looked like burden begins to reveal itself as the rarest form of power. Jung often warned that individuation, the rare process of becoming whole, does not begin in comfort. It begins in distance. He noted that those who move toward higher consciousness frequently feel set apart, even estranged, not because they wish to be, but because their inner life no longer moves with the crowd. For the woman with high spiritual intelligence, this distance is not chosen. It descends upon her as naturally as breath. On the surface, her life may look full. She has friends, colleagues, family. She may attend gatherings, join conversations, smile when expected. But inwardly, she often feels alone. The chatter around her sounds like echoes from a world she has quietly outgrown. The dramas that once excited her now drain her. The ambitions others obsess over strike her as hollow. It is not that she cannot play along, it is that her soul refuses. Freud once described this kind of estrangement in his writings on civilization. He argued that the more conscious a person becomes, the less satisfaction they can take in collective illusions. What comforted others, conformity, repetition, small rituals, feels suffocating to her. She senses that she belongs to a different rhythm, and this creates a loneliness that is both painful and necessary. Picture her at a dinner with friends she has known for years. They trade stories of office politics, new purchases, petty conflicts. She listens, she laughs, she nods, but a part of her floats elsewhere, not out of disdain, but out of dissonance. What once felt alive now feels like a costume she can no longer wear. Later, she lies awake, wondering why the night left her emptier rather than nourished. Or imagine her in love. A partner who once thrilled her with attention now feels distant, not because he changed, but because she did. She sees through dynamics she once mistook for passion. She feels the quiet pull to solitude, not to escape intimacy, but to preserve truth. And yet, this often isolates her. People accuse her of being cold, detached, too serious. They do not see that her seriousness is not severity, but sincerity. This is the paradox of sacred loneliness. It wounds and it heals. It isolates her from the many, while preparing her to meet the few who can stand at her depth. It strips away false belonging, so that real belonging can begin. Jung called this the desert of individuation, the barren landscape one must walk before discovering an oasis. Freud saw it as the breaking of compulsive ties, the courage to let go of what once felt safe but was never truly nourishing. This loneliness is not a flaw. It is the first sign of high spiritual intelligence, the quiet exile that signals growth beyond the herd. Painful, yes, but in that ache lies the proof that she no longer feeds on illusions. Her solitude is not emptiness. It is the soil where a deeper presence will grow, and the foundation upon which every other sign begins to unfold. Freud was one of the first to notice that the unconscious speaks through the body. A patient of his suffered mysterious pains that no medical test could explain. When she finally gave words to long-buried grief, the symptoms began to fade. Freud called it conversion hysteria, but beneath the label was a radical truth. The body reveals what the mouth cannot say. Jung carried the insight further. He observed that when a psyche begins to integrate its conflicts, the body often follows. Dreams would shift, symptoms would lessen, vitality would return, not because the body was fixed, but because the inner war had quieted. The woman with high spiritual intelligence embodies this harmony almost instinctively. She listens to the signals of her body as though they are another language of the soul, and she answers with alignment rather than suppression. This harmony looks ordinary on the surface, but its effects are profound. She does not chase every new wellness trend because her choices are not driven by fear. She may rest instead of powering through and somehow accomplish more in the long run. She may walk away from environments that sicken her, even if on paper they look prestigious. To outsiders, her choices seem irrational. To her, they are necessary. You see this reflected in some of the strongest women of our time. When Oprah Winfrey speaks about learning to say no, she describes how her body would tighten, her stomach clench, every time she agreed to something against her truth. Only when she began to honor those signals did her life and health align. The lesson was not self-indulgence, but self-integration. Or consider Serena Williams, who chose to step back from the sport that made her a legend in order to protect her health and family. To many, it looked like retreat. But for a woman with high spiritual intelligence, this is coherence, refusing to sacrifice the body at the altar of external achievement. The decision itself became a statement. Strength is not only in pushing through, but in knowing when to stop. This is how mind and body dance in a rare harmony. The woman with high spiritual intelligence does not deny pain, nor does she drown in it. She reads it. She honors its message. Sometimes the symptom means rest. Sometimes it means speak. Sometimes it means leave. And when she obeys, the body responds in kind, no longer forced to scream what the psyche has already learned to whisper. Jung once wrote that wholeness is not achieved by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. Freud showed that when the darkness remains buried, the body carries it. Together, they reveal the same truth. When a woman integrates her inner life, her body becomes an ally, no longer an adversary. This is the second sign of high spiritual intelligence, a rare alignment where the psyche no longer wages war against the body and the body no longer betrays the psyche. It is a harmony that looks quiet, but it is the foundation of power that endures. Freud observed that insults often strike deeper than logic can explain. He argued that the sting of criticism lands where an old wound lies buried, and when that wound is denied, the psyche either collapses or lashes out. Jung, from another angle, warned that what we refuse to face in ourselves reappears as shadow in the words of others. Most people are trapped here. Either they internalize contempt or they fight it endlessly. But a woman with high spiritual intelligence responds differently. She feels the sting. She does not pretend to be untouchable, yet she does not let it define her. The negative word lands, but it does not enter. The judgment is heard, but it is not believed. Where another might crumble or retaliate, she allows the moment to pass through her like wind through an open gate. This does not mean she is numb, quite the opposite. She is deeply sensitive, but her sensitivity is not fragility, it is clarity. She recognizes that contempt often reveals more about the speaker than the target. What was meant as a wound becomes information. She asks, what shadow does this belong to? Theirs or mine? If it is theirs, she lets it go. If it touches hers, she works with it. Either way, she refuses to become a prisoner of it. You see this resilience in Malala Yousafzai. Shot in the head as a teenager for daring to speak about girls' education, she did not return hatred for hatred. She named the violence for what it was, but refused to let bitterness consume her. Her words became sharper, not her spirit harder. She transformed contempt into a global movement, proving that resilience is not the absence of pain, but the refusal to let pain dictate identity. Or take Michelle Obama. As First Lady, she was mocked for everything from her words to her clothing to the very shape of her body. Any other public figure might have grown defensive or withdrawn. Instead, she acknowledged the attacks but did not grant them authorship over her life. She chose to respond with grace, even humor, revealing a truth Jung often repeated: what you resist persists. What you accept transforms. This is the third sign of high spiritual intelligence, the rare ability to let negativity touch without letting it penetrate. She does not fight every insult, nor does she collapse under them. She filters, she discerns, she transforms. To stand in this way is dangerous in its own right, because when a woman refuses to be destabilized by contempt, she becomes ungovernable. Others cannot use shame to control her, and in a world built on subtle forms of control, that makes her resilience not just strength, but quiet rebellion. Jung often spoke of the eternal child archetype, not as immaturity, but as the wellspring of freshness and authenticity that survives beneath the layers of adulthood. Most people bury it. They cover it with ambition, cynicism, or masks of performance. But in the rare woman with high spiritual intelligence, this archetype is not buried. It breathes through her, quietly, steadily, in a way others cannot explain but immediately feel. Children notice first. A toddler in a crowded room pulls away from every stranger, yet crawls directly into her lap. A baby restless in dozens of arms settles almost instantly against her chest. A shy child who avoids eye contact suddenly begins to speak freely, as if they had known her for years. She does not entertain them, she does not coax them. Her presence is enough. Innocence recognizes itself and responds without hesitation. Animals respond too. A nervous dog stops pacing and lies at her feet. A cat that avoids touch rubs against her hand. Horses lower their heads and press close, breathing calmly in her presence. Trainers might call it patience, kindness, or energy. Jung would say it is the eternal child alive within her, the part of her psyche that never betrayed instinct. Because she has stopped masking herself, unmasked creatures trust her. This quality can be seen in women history remembers for their disarming authenticity. Princess Diana, surrounded by royal protocol and distance, would kneel on the ground to look a child in the eyes. The photographs remain iconic. Children laughing, running to her without hesitation, while adults stood back in awe. She did not perform empathy. She carried a sincerity that dissolved the invisible wall between herself and innocence. Or consider Greta Thunberg. Still young, she speaks with uncompromising directness that unsettles politicians. But to children, she seems less like a figure of authority and more like one of their own. They do not sense pretension in her. They hear their own voice echoed back, raw, unfiltered, unwilling to betray what it knows. For some, this connection is deeply comforting. Parents notice their children calm down in her presence and call it a gift. Friends bring pets to her home, half joking that they behave better around you. They are not wrong. She embodies coherence, and coherence is what innocence trusts most. But this gift also carries danger. Adults who have long abandoned their own innocence often find her unsettling. They cannot stand the way she reminds them of what they lost: spontaneity, honesty, unguarded play. They may even criticize her, saying she is naive or childish. In truth, it is not her immaturity that disturbs them, but her refusal to bury what they buried long ago. This is the fourth sign of high spiritual intelligence, a natural bond with what is uncorrupted, what has not yet learned to lie. It is a bond that comforts the pure-hearted and unsettles the disguised. Freud once wrote that the unconscious does not know time. To the unconscious, childhood grief can live as vividly as if it happened yesterday, and long-forgotten desires can surface as if they were never buried. Jung agreed, but he went further. He saw that when a psyche reaches integration, the experience of time itself begins to bend. For women with high spiritual intelligence, this is one of the most disorienting and powerful signs of their difference. She does not live in time the way others do. Her days are not ruled by the clock, even when she meets deadlines. Her sense of rhythm comes from within, not from the constant ticking outside. To colleagues, she may look slow, unwilling to rush, and yet, paradoxically, when a crisis strikes, she often moves faster than anyone, with clarity that feels uncanny. For her, time stretches and contracts, depending on what truly matters. Picture her in an office where everyone is frantic before a deadline, papers flying, tempers flaring, every minute counted like a drop of blood. She, meanwhile, works steadily, almost calmly, and in the end, she finishes on time without the collapse of nerves. Others wonder, how did she stay so composed? It is because she does not borrow panic from the group. She moves by an inner clock that wastes no energy on frenzy. In her personal life, this experience of time shows up differently. Birthdays, anniversaries, social milestones, they mean less to her than the quality of the moment. She might forget the date, but remember every detail of the feeling. She might seem careless about when things should happen. Marriage by 30, success by 40, retirement by 60. But in truth, she refuses to live inside borrowed calendars. For her, one deep hour of authenticity outweighs a year of empty ritual. We see this in women like Jane Goodall, who spent decades observing chimpanzees in the forests of Gombe. To the impatient, it looked like wasting time, months of waiting for a single gesture, years before patterns emerged. But she lived in another tempo, one that matched the rhythms of nature rather than the clock of industry. Her patience rewrote science, or in Maya Angelou, who often spoke of waiting days, even weeks, for the right sentence to arrive, refusing to force her art into the deadlines of publishers. She treated time not as a master, but as a collaborator. The result was work that endures across generations. This is the fifth sign of high spiritual intelligence, a different experience of time itself. While others race, she waits. While others wait, she moves. Her life does not fit the linear script of what comes next. It bends, it deepens, it expands. And though the world may call her slow or strange or late, in truth, she is aligned with a rhythm that no clock can command. There is a cost every woman with high spiritual intelligence eventually pays. Jung warned that truth threatens the unconscious agreements upon which societies are built. Freud saw the same danger from another angle. Civilization survives on illusions, and those who tear the veil are punished. For these women, truth is not a role they choose. It is a force they cannot resist, and the world, unprepared for that force, often turns against them. History is full of such women. Hypatia of Alexandria, one of the first great female philosophers and scientists, was murdered by a mob in the year 415. Her crime was not sorcery, as her enemies claimed, but clarity. She questioned dogma, taught openly, and for that, she was silenced. Centuries later, Joan of Arc stood before kings and generals, declaring visions and truths no one wished to hear. She led armies at 19 and was burned at the stake at 21. Her courage unsettled the order of her time, and the order destroyed her for it. In modern memory, Hannah Arendt endured relentless attack for naming totalitarianism in ways that made entire nations uncomfortable. Her writings dissected the lies that people preferred to believe, and for that she was branded cold, arrogant, even traitorous. Audre Lorde, too, was cast out of communities that should have embraced her, simply because she insisted that silence is complicity. The pattern is clear. When a woman carries high spiritual intelligence, her truth-telling does not flatter. It exposes, and exposure provokes fear. She becomes the mirror in which others see what they have long denied, their cowardice, their cruelty, their compromises. and instead of thanking her, they turn against her. This is not confined to history. Every generation repeats it in new forms. A woman speaks out against corruption and is called hysterical. She points to injustice and is accused of being divisive. She refuses to soften her clarity, and society punishes her with ridicule, exile, or erasure. The words change, the costumes change, but the mechanism remains the same. The herd cannot forgive the one who names its shadow. And yet, this too is the mark of high spiritual intelligence. The woman who carries it cannot betray her truth without betraying herself. She accepts the cost, misunderstanding, isolation, even hatred, because she knows the deeper cost would be silence. This is the sixth and final sign, the burden and the glory of truth-telling. It wounds her, but it also crowns her. It strips her of easy acceptance, but it makes her unbreakable, and it sets the stage for the final realization that all these experiences woven together shape not a fragile exile, but a woman the world cannot destroy. Each of these 6 experiences carries its own weight. Sacred loneliness strips her of easy belonging. Mind-body harmony demands that she abandon what poisons her, even when the world calls her selfish. Resilience to negativity forces her to endure contempt in silence. Stronger, but more isolated. Connection with innocence comforts children and animals, yet unsettles adults who fear being seen without masks. Her different experience of time makes her seem slow to the hurried, reckless to the cautious, as if she lives out of step with the world. And truth-telling, her final mark, costs her approval, relationships, sometimes even her safety. None of this is light. To live with high spiritual intelligence is not to be praised or celebrated. It is to be tested. Again and again, she is misnamed, misunderstood, misjudged. She is called too much, too strange, too serious. She loses what others cling to, and for long stretches, she walks alone. And yet, this is the paradox. These same burdens are what forge her. Loneliness becomes depth. Sensitivity becomes clarity. Negativity becomes information. Innocence becomes magnetism. Time becomes freedom. Truth becomes power. Piece by piece, what looked like weakness reveals itself as the rarest strength, and what looked like exile becomes sovereignty. This is the woman who emerges, not fragile, not breakable, but untouchable. She cannot be ruled by shame. She cannot be seduced by illusions. She cannot be broken by contempt. She stands, not because the world accepts her, but because she has accepted herself. If any of these 6 signs felt close to your own life, write it in the comments. Sometimes just naming it out loud is a relief. And if this video helped you feel a little less strange, hit subscribe so you'll know where to come back the next time you need that reminder. See you in the next video.